All right, you're very welcome to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. I'm Raf Diallo. As ever, we're on RT.ie, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And it's on RT.ie and YouTube. You'll find details of the timestamps for each episode, depending on what you're specifically interested in, and particularly useful for longer episodes. Later on, I'll be joined by Shelbourne's Rachel Graham as the Women's Premier Division resumed, and also off the back of the end of an era for Ireland legend Louise Quinn. But first, we're going to chat about the Men's Premier Division and Champions League with Richie Towell and Conan Byrne. Lads, how are you? What's the crack?
Oh, good, Raf. Thanks for having us.
Oh, good, Raf. Yeah.
Yeah, now we had a double helping of action in the men's Premier Division across Friday and Monday. We'll go game by game for Monday shortly, but first a reminder of Friday's fixtures and results. So Waterford 2-1 winners away at Bohemians. Cork City and Shamrock Rovers shared the spoils at Turner's Cross. Derry City beat Shelbourne 2-0. Sligo Rovers and Drogheda United 2-all draw there with Sligo fighting back to take a point. And then St. Pat's beat Galway United 2-0. But now to Monday, and let's start with the Shells game. And Shells hosting Waterford, and then they suffered another defeat. So that's two defeats in a row and stretches their winless run to five. And Conan, in terms of that winless run, and I suppose in the context, they're not that far off the top either, even if seventh place seems far away. When does a blip start becoming a concern when you look at Shells?
I suppose when the gap starts to get a bit bigger in the league, like they're still very much in title contention along with 6 or 7 other teams. It'll be disappointing from a Shell's perspective, losing the 2 games over the weekend. I think the performance up in Derry, like they've a lot of possession of the ball, Raf, and they have that this season compared to what they would have had last season. So there's been a change in mentality in the dressing room in that regard. But when you're playing at home in front of your own fans and you're coming up against a rejuvenated Waterford, to be fair, who had a lot of confidence after their win against Bohemians on Friday night, you have to keep it tight early doors. And simple set piece into the box, an okay header, brilliant movement by Hammond as usual, but didn't get probably the power that he wanted in, and then slips through Cairns' hands and into the goal. It's back to the wall. Like you're going to be up against it then. And I suppose Duff is trying to cause reactions within the camp as well, making those 2 substitutions after 33 minutes of the game, and he's looking for a bounce back from that. Didn't come. Having said that, though, they had a shot every 3 minutes. They had about 30 shots on goal in the game yesterday. Only 3 of them were on target. And I think that's the problem with Chelsea. They're just not scoring enough goals. Meepo had an unbelievable opportunity at 1-0. Fluffed his lines for about 8 yards. You would have put your house on them to score. So yeah, I do.
I don't think Roddy Collins would have put his house on it, in fairness, based on what he said a few weeks ago now. But yeah, no, I take your point.
But I'm sure Meepo would have himself. He has the confidence to feel that if he was in that situation 9 times out of 10, he'd score. 10 times out of 10, he'd score. But sometimes when in those situations when the pressure is on and you need to take your chances to score goals, it can get to you a little bit. So no, it was in terms of a blip. Yeah, it's a blip. 5 winless in 5, like you say, but it's important that they bounce back, and it'll be important that they do that very soon.
Yeah, Richie, as Conan said there, the set piece goal that they conceded, they'd be disappointed with that. And it actually follows on from the Derry game a few days previous where, a set piece is floated in and Michael Duffy at the far post sort of unmarked scores. So that's probably the bigger issue rather than as Conan said, they had a load of chances at the other end, and maybe, on another day they get a point or even 3 from that.
Yeah, listen, I actually think the biggest concern for Shelbourne at the moment is that the second lowest scorers in the league, only Waterford are behind them, which is a scary stat. You think of any previous champions years gone by, they're probably always the top scorers in the league. Now, I know Shells wouldn't have been the top scorers last year in the league, and they were really relying on that solid defence. They were. This year, they don't have that. They're leaking in goals left, right and centre, especially from set plays. And when you're leaking in goals and you're the second lowest scorers in the league, that's going to be a big concern. I know Conan touched on it there. They're still only a couple of points within top of the league, but it's still a massive concern when you're not getting the performances and the goals. Listen, you can have all the possession in the world, you can, especially against a team like Waterford. They're going to be happy, especially they went 1-0 up 3 minutes into the game, so they're going to be quite happy. You have the ball in your own half, do what you want with it. We're going to be sitting in our shape. They'll be perfect with that, especially with the new manager coming in. I'm sure that's what he worked on during the week. With the lads, so it's a big concern and I can't see where the goals are going to come from, to be honest, Raf. Like we spoke about Meepo's finishing, it doesn't seem to have got any better. You would have thought that a couple of goals would have ignited that confidence, but it doesn't seem to be. Like the chance that he had, he's got to go and score that. Like if you're 1-0 behind in a game, like if Shels go and score that, it opens the game up completely. Waterford have a completely different game plan, and they have to kind of come out again, because let's be realistic, Waterford are down there. They need the points more than anyone as well. But when you don't finish them chances, it's backs against the wall for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and then from the Waterford point of view, so that's 3 wins in a row, and of course a manager bounce Conan as well, John Coleman having come in, but the manager bounce started with the interim manager first before Coleman came in. And of course, he's a former Sligo Rovers manager and had 2 very long spells at Accrington Stanley. #Who are they? Obviously, people who might remember that ad from a certain time in the past. But I imagine the biggest thing for him, and even though when you look at the Shell's chances, they probably should and would have conceded in other circumstances, the fact it's the first clean sheet of the season, it will probably be a big thing that they can build on.
Yeah, and I think full credit has to go to Matt Lawler as well for the job that he's done in the interim. I think it probably would have been 4 if they didn't have those moments of madness against Cork. They were 1-0 up going into the 90th minute there, and they conceded 2 late goals to lose 2-1. Apart from that, they've been excellent in the last 4 games, like we talked about. They've beaten Derry City, they've beaten Bowes up at Dalymount, and then they went up again yesterday and beat Shells. And you might say, yeah, Shells had 27, 28 shots on goal in the game. But they have to pull apart. They could have shots from 30, 35 yards, 20, 25 yards. But they weren't being broken down. Like I said, Meepo had a wonderful opportunity, 2 or 3 very good chances that Shells would be very disappointed and didn't take. But by and large, Waterford were very, very good. Both in defence and on the counter as well. They could have even sneaked another one. But when you have the likes of Pádraig Hammond in your team, Tommy Lonergan in your team, you're always going to create chances. And young Conan Noonan is a fantastic footballer too. Created the goal yesterday. And he can change a game. And yeah, I think Waterford will look, John Coleman coming in with the wealth of experience that he has. Waterford could and should be doing okay. I'm still worried about their squad depth, and I think that's something that maybe John Coleman will be looking at. It would be no surprise to see some players coming in from England maybe over the summer.
Yeah, and then one of the other results last night, Derry City 1-0 winners over St. Pat's, and Conan, both sides come into that game off the back of really good wins from Friday night. But the intriguing thing from St. Pat's point of view was the selection calls you have to make, and I suppose taking into context the turnaround between those games, the pitch as well, and then the tactical demands of what they were looking to do against Derry as well.
Yeah, I still think it's very early on this season, Raf, to be changing too much. These are professional footballers. They're fit. They've had a very good pre-season, a very long pre-season to be ready for these type of games. So the only issue that I would have is that those players didn't play because of the pitch, because the pitch is particularly poor. Apart from that, I know that's a big squad. You have to keep everybody happy, and you're expecting them to come in and be chomping at the bit when you get their opportunity. But after a fantastic win against Galway on Friday, I don't know about the changes that Stephen Kenny made. And obviously, he's better at it than I am. He knows the squad inside out. Aidan Keena, for instance, just back from a really bad hamstring injury and did really well on Friday. But when he came on yesterday, he was absolutely superb. His touch, his passing, trying to get shots away as well. Drop deep in terms of letting Mason be the front man. So yeah, I'd be interested to get inside Stephen Kenny's head to say, did I make the right decision there, making all those changes for such a big game up in the Ryan McBride Brandywell? Because they were they had a fantastic performance on Friday. They made a couple of changes themselves, but what they did keep in their team was Adam O'Reilly, who is just a workhorse. And not only that, he's just tenacious. He's very good on the ball as well. Breaks up play. He just never stops running. And I thought he was pivotal in the game yesterday.
Yeah, and he obviously played a role in the goal, Richie, as well, but probably the biggest role in that positionally, and then even the chance that follows after that, is Tom Gravosty from St. Pat's point of view.
That's what, when you're just talking about the team selection there, I was so surprised that I didn't see Sean Horde in the starting 11. Now, obviously he's only back from injury as well, so you can look at it both ways, where you think, right, if we can rest them up a little bit, keep them fresh for Friday. But as Conan said, that was a massive, massive game for Pats. Sometimes as a footballer, you want to just keep the train rolling. You want to get into a bit of a groove of like that, playing 90 minutes, building up that robustness, and letting it lead into the next one you do. And when you make so many changes, it's hard as a footballer. It is when you're in 1 week, you're out another week. You start on a Monday, you don't start on a Friday. You can't get that consistency in your game. You can't. And listen, let's be realistic. Stephen got the decisions wrong. They got beat at the end of the day, and Gravossi was at fault for the goal. So, listen, I'm sure Stephen's a great manager. He's someone I've worked with really closely for a number of years, and I'm sure he'll know that he's made the wrong decision. Like.
Yeah, and from the Derry City point of view, Richie, I mean, this is a second win in a row. Obviously, previous week, ourselves and Keith were talking about and reacting to the defeat to Waterford, and then they go on and put in two really good back-to-back performances. They're third in the table. Not that the table really means much at this stage of the season, but do you feel they're clicking overall, or there's something happening at least with Derry where something might flow out of it eventually? Like even the thing Liam Boyce has started chipping away with goals. Michael Duffy still producing.
Yeah, well, I actually had watched quite a lot of Derry at the start of the season, and I was so disappointed in them, Raf. Like, it didn't look like they had any style of play, and understandably so, because they'd had a big turnaround. They'd had a lot of players come in, a lot of players go out. They had a new manager come in, so there was always going to be that where it wasn't going to be as fluid. And you can see Tiernan Lynch has got a style of play across to the players now, and it's working really well. It is. Obviously, they didn't have the start that they would have wanted, and that was always going to happen. It was, but you can see them now. They're starting to motor really slowly. They're after getting Pat Hoban coming back from injury. Michael Duffy is absolutely flowing. I think he's probably been the standout player of the season so far. And then you have the likes of Liam Boyce, who's chipping in with a few goals. Mullen was really good, as Conan alluded to earlier. O'Reilly was brilliant. He had a good chance in the first half. What really impressed me was, obviously, Conan spoke about his tenacity with the tackles and getting around the pitch. He's that player that does that for them, but his little through ball for the goal was incredible, especially on a pitch up there. It's not easy to have a perfect way to pass on a pitch like the way it is up there. So for that, it was you could show that little bit of quality, Conan. He's been another standout player for them as well.
Yeah, and from a Pat's point of view, finally, Conan, do you feel they're still lacking a statement win against, one of the teams that would be sort of expected to be in and around them? Because they've done well overall where they are on the table, but like everyone else, there's been that level of inconsistency. But it just seems maybe that kind of big standout win over a team that is tipped to go on and be there when it comes to November time. It hasn't happened yet, has it?
No, it hasn't happened yet, Raf. And I think it's one win in their last five as well, which hasn't helped the situation for them either. But having said that, they sit 2 points off the top. But I think that this league will make us feel silly at times. Will make you be silly at times with some of the comments that we can make, because we can say, they're not up to it. They're not doing great. Bit like Derry a couple of weeks ago. Bit like
Bowes
have been the prime example. Richie, yeah. It's crazy, like. So, but in terms of Pats, I do think that they'll, a bit like Shamrock Rovers, I think they'll start to progress and get better as the season goes on. I think the consistency in terms of team selection from both of those teams needs to be a little bit better, because, like Richie says, it's very difficult as a footballer when you go out and you feel as if you put in a 9 out of 10 performance and then not play the next game. You're like, Jesus, I'm just getting in the groove here. I just wouldn't mind having another 70, 75 minutes just to go again, have it in me, and then change it up. But just to have game by game and the inconsistencies of team selection, I think that, I don't know if we're trying to be like a Premier League outfit where there's quality everywhere. 22 players that can just come in and out of a team and can make all the difference. It won't in this league. There is that gap between a starting 11 and the rest of the squads in certain teams.
Yeah, and obviously the scenes at the end of that match by the benches was a little bit unfortunate as well, although it seems to be fairly unclear as to how and what sparked it. But there were a couple of red cards flashed in the direction of the Pats bench. And just to note as well, there's a good fly on the wall piece by Gavin Cumsky in the Irish Times, given the inside track on the work at the same Pats Academy as well. And Conan, they have been doing a huge amount of work. I think the piece itself, they're in talking to Ger O'Brien and the work he's been doing there. Then the likes of Jamie Moore as well, who's been sort of coaching underage for a long time as well. We've talked a lot about the Shamrock Rovers Academy, but Pats in particular have been very productive as well.
Yeah, absolutely. They have. They've brought through some fantastic players, and I think it all stems from when Liam Buckley was in charge. Raf, if I'm being completely honest, in terms of the Pats Academy, like he brought through the likes of Darren Markey, Jamie McGrath, brought these players through and gave them the opportunity at such a young age, and they've gone on to bigger and better things. And what he did was he brought them in at various points. He didn't just throw them in, keep them in. And I think that was important in terms of their development. And Then moving on through the years, then and right up to now, where you have Mason getting across the water in a fantastic move for him, for the club, and also for the League of Ireland, because it's kind of stems now. You're not going to get players from academies in Ireland now on the cheap anymore. And I think that was a statement from St. Pat's that no, this isn't going to happen. And Jer's been around the game, around the club for a very long time. He knows what it takes to be successful on the pitch, and he's certainly doing that in terms of the academy teams as well. And long may that continue, because it's the other thing about Pats is they try and bring in players, former players, to go in and coach the academy teams as well. Players that know the club inside out. They know what it takes to win. They know what it takes to be successful, and to have them teaching those young players. I think a lot of clubs are trying to do it. Shamrock Rovers do it as well. That's no surprise at how they're successful too. I think that's key as well.
Yeah, and then one of the other results last night, Drogheda United beating Cork City 3-2, and that was obviously a bit of a thriller there as well. So, Richie, looking at Drogheda, obviously top of the table, so what complaints could there be? But Kevin Doherty was quite blunt about his team's defending against Sligo when they gave up the two-goal lead, and then they concede two again against Cork City. And as well as things are going, I imagine, especially the type of manager that he is, that he won't see that level of defending, the individual defending and the mistakes, as being sustainable over a longer term period, even if the firepower at the other end is getting them out of jail most of the time.
Yeah, it's crazy, because I've seen his two interviews. He looks so deflated after both games, which is crazy when you think about what they've done. Kevin has done an absolutely incredible job there. He has, and then you see him after the game, and he's kind of hammering the lads a little bit. If you're sitting in the dressing room there, you'd have to be thinking I'm giving it me all for you out here, and we're top of the leagues. You want to be careful a little bit. But now listen, the goals that they have conceded are really poor goals, and Kevin's a really, really clever manager, and as you said, he knows that that's not sustainable over the course of the season. You cannot go out and be relying on scoring 3 goals every game if you're going to be conceding 2. So listen, he's under no illusions that they need to tighten up at the back, and there's no better game to do, because they have Shamrock Rovers on Friday up in Towell, so it's going to be a really, really tough game for them, and that's actually a game for them that they can put out a real statement, Raf. They've obviously, they've done incredible. They've gone and got some great results everywhere. But if they go to Tala Stadium on Friday night and get anything from the game, that's going to be a big, right, well, we are here and we're here to stay. So it's going to be a really, really intriguing game, because I actually watched Shamrock Rovers last night, and they were probably in second or third gear, and they were absolutely cruising. They were excellent. Could have been probably 5 or 6-0, to be honest, Raf. Sligo were actually really poor in the game, but that's for another chat. But listen, Drogheda, absolutely incredible what they're doing, and you see the likes of Shea and Farrell, Ryan Brennan, Warren Davis, players who have been around the league for a while, and it's like they're getting a new lease of life, which is great. It is obviously we all know that they have the full-time football now, and you can see it's paying fruition no end.
Yeah, and Conan, just in terms of Drogheda, when you're watching them, are you still kind of thinking of them in terms of the preseason expectations that we would have had of where you would expect them to be in the table, or are you kind of judging them on the new reality where the standards are higher in terms of the demands, and obviously Kevin Doherty is trying to push it as far as he can as well?
He is trying to push it. I was very interested to hear his comments after the game of Friday night, where he comes out and he canes his players, because he has been on the defensive of them all season. Well, at the start of the season anyway, in terms of a lot of people talking about them being relegation candidates. And you've got to understand that they've come from part-time to full-time. I think that was a realistic aim for a lot of people to think that, Drogheda might struggle this season. But he has completely turned around. The us against the world mentality. The formation suits them, and this is what I talk about in terms of formation. Some people just do it for the sake of it, but his players, if you went in for a 4-4-2 setup in that Drogheda team, it wouldn't work. So that back three is so vital to them, because they have 2 wing backs that will just work up and down, Conor Kane and Owen Lamb. And then you have a Hui as well that can come in there, that got injured on Friday against Sligo, who's an excellent player as well. I think the key to them, a lot of talk has been the defence, and rightly so, but I think Ryan Brennan in the centre of the park has been outstanding. His positional sense as that holding player, along with Shea and Farrell, has been absolutely brilliant. The amount of vital blocks and interceptions that he's got, along with enabling Darren Markey and Thomas Lua just to do their bits of art up further up the pitch. And I think, like Richie mentioned, his start of season, Michael Duffy, I think mine is Warren Davis, considering the amount of goals that he's got. 5 goals, I think, in his last 7 games. And I loved his finish yesterday, just getting across that defender for the cross for a simple 2-yard tap in. That's what you want your centre forward to do. And he's starting to shine. Just needed a bit of confidence. He was one of those players that kind of bit part player last year. Didn't Douglas Taylor was doing was doing so well, and he wasn't getting a look in. And then Warren Davis has got his chance and he's taken it. So yeah, I do think that Kevin Doherty is every right to have a go at his players, because the defending has not been good enough, and if they want to stick around the top of the table, it has to be better. But like I said, he just has to be careful on how he delivers that message.
Yeah, and then obviously the penalty as well, Richie, that sort of decided this game. So Troost colliding into Thomas Alua. Obviously was given any complaints there from a Cork City point of view that you'd be looking, or is it kind of stonewall?
Nah, it's a stonewall penalty. I don't know what he's doing, Raf, to be honest. Like, there's only a couple of seconds left in the game. Just let your big defenders go and deal with the ball. Like, he comes running out. That's what keepers would drive you mad, wouldn't they? At stages they would. So he comes out, and listen, Cork done really well on the day. They did. They scored some good goals. I thought your man Daniels was an absolute handful up front for them. His little touch for his fourth goal was incredible. Little flick, and then he follows it. That's what you want from your striker. Hold the play, get yourself in the box, score a goal. And the keeper really lets them down. He doesn't. Tim Clancy would be absolutely devastated, because let's be realistic. But the way where Cork are now, they need all the points they can get, and that would have been a massive point against Strada, who are top of the league, and obviously they still have Shani Maguire and Rudy Keaton now. So listen, it's going to be really tough for them over the next couple of months, and hopefully they can come through, because Cork have been a great addition to the league, especially with that fan base down there and things like that. So yeah, let's hope they can get going now. Like.
Yeah, it's a time. Daniels, I suppose, Conan, that's a timely performance as well. And even going back to the Friday night, he gets that assist, the layoff for Freddie Anderson's goal as well. So that's kind of before Shawnee Maguire properly comes back and then gets going again, he'll need to continue doing what he's doing, I imagine.
I've been impressed with him, Raf. That little layoff for Freddie Anderson, like you talked about on Friday, was outstanding, because it just came to him, and it was the awareness to spot Anderson on his own, the edge of the box. A lot of strikers these days would try and touch and turn and try and get it through a crowd of defenders. He saw Anderson was in a better position and put in a great ball, laid off a great ball to him. And his goals the other night, yeah, defending was pretty poor, but Daniels was quick, sharp, alert, and took his goals very well. So he's been an astute signing. And look, it would have been 4 games unbeaten for Cork. I think we forget that at times, like, because you see them, they were winning against Sligo and they conceded late in the game. A great draw against Shamrock Rovers down in Turner's Cross. And again, to go 1-0 up, go 2-1 down against Strada, fight back, get an equaliser. Yeah, you'd be disappointed in truth to concede that penalty so late in the game. And I'm sure Tim Clancy was pulling his hair out afterwards.
Yeah, and then Shamrock Rovers 2, Sligo Rovers 0. And Richie, you've already kind of mentioned there that Shamrock Rovers were sort of playing a little bit with the handbrake on, as Arsene Wenger would have always said. But, when you look over the span of the 2 games, so 4 points from 6 against Cork and Sligo, I suppose not ideal from their point of view, but then in the context of the league as well, with everyone dropping points, how do you think Stephen Bradley would be looking at that?
Yeah, look, against Cork, they probably should have the game done and dusted by half time. And when you don't do that, everybody knows all it takes is one chance to flip a game on its head. And especially when you're playing away from home, it's a lot harder, because obviously the home fans, they can sense it in the stadium. They can all we need is one chance here. And it was a great strike. It was a great finish for the player for Cork. Then going into the Sligo game, listen, they absolutely dominated. I was actually really, really disappointed in Sligo. They had probably, over the course of the 90 minutes, they probably had 5 or 10 minute spell where they had a decent free kick and probably 3 or 4 corners, and that was about it. I was so surprised even how they pressed. Rovers, they've been playing the same way for the last probably 4 or 5 years, and Sligo went and pressed them with 2 strikers against 5, and Shamrock Rovers just played through the thirds at ease, got into the final third. I'd say their entries into the final third were through the roof, and look, it was great goals. Jack Byrne and Graham Burke, they caused absolute havoc for the whole game, and you could probably see where Stephen Bradley could see the game, how easy it was, because they ended up taking the 2 of them off with probably 25-30 minutes left. And yeah, look, Shamrock Rovers are motoring nicely now at the moment. Obviously dropping 2 points down in Turner's Cross wouldn't have been ideal, but you can see where they are. They're only 2 points probably off it now, and they're starting to hit a bit of form. They're getting players back from injury, so I think for me, they're the favourites to win it anyway.
Yeah, and then obviously the goals first on Friday night, Rory Gaffney, and then Aaron Greene. And a landmark goal as well, a 100 league goal, Richie. Obviously, we talked a bit about Gaffney and his continued importance a few weeks ago, but Aaron Greene has always been around the scene, and you can't turn your nose up at 100 league goals in terms of what he's done as a player within this league.
Nah, it's incredible, Raf. Like 100 goals, as Conan will tell you, it's not easy to score goals. That's why goal scorers are worth so much money, and to get 100 goals in the league. But a big thing for Aaron Greene is it's only really when you play with someone, you know how valuable they are, not just to the team, but to the whole squad and to the club as a whole. Aaron's not just a great player, he's a great person. And see, for any young player coming through, he's the one that they'll be looking at to be like, right, that's how I want to live my life. That's how I want to train every day. You don't get to his age and score that amount of goals and win that amount of leagues from not doing everything properly. And he's been an absolute credit, not just to Shamrock Rovers Football Club, but to himself and his family. I know his family are really big Shamrock Rovers fans. His son plays up there. His daughters go to the game with his wife. So hopefully they were all there last night to witness 100 goals, because it's an incredible achievement. And he's not done yet by the looks of it. He still looks really fit and sharp.
Yeah, and then from Sligo Rovers' point of view, of course, they could take something, I suppose, Conan, from the draw of the game in terms of the fight back, and obviously they're still fighting for John Russell there to get a point. But Owen Elding, obviously a talisman, and then Francie Lomboto has done quite well as an impact sub, but then he starts against Shamrock Rovers, and as Richie's kind of pointed out, then they're trying to press with two up front, and Shamrock Rovers sort of play through the thirds and play through them. But overall, and this isn't really as much about Lomboto than anything else, but more certain players seem to make an impact when they come off the bench, but then maybe the impact isn't as apparent when they start games. Have you come across too many of those and how do you kind of explain that in a certain sense? And are there certain players that just maybe they're better in bursts, and maybe I don't know, and again, this is not a reflection on Lomboto, the sample size is way too small, but if that's something that does happen within the game.
Well, there's a few that spring to mind. I remember Chris Fairclough for Liverpool back in the late 80s, I think, was one. Then you had Solskjaer was another one that was known as a super sub. He absolutely hated that title, but he was. But in terms of League of Ireland, like you don't want to be known as that player that makes that impact. But Lomboto is certainly that player, because when he comes off the bench, he came off the bench on Friday night against Strada, and he completely changed the game with his hold-up play, his strength. Just getting in behind that Drogheda back line, because they're so strong themselves, so he's able to hold the ball up and bring others into play. But when he starts, then where's the impact going to come from then when Rovers start to dominate? And they didn't have that at all in the game yesterday. Like Elding plays in off the right hand side, so effective in that role, because he's so sharp, so quick. His movement is fantastic as well. So when you have that Keane Kavanagh or Lomboto, or like I'm sure John Russell would look to get Wilson Waweru back very soon as well. And he'll play off those players particularly well. But I think the big issue for Sligo, though, is just in terms of how they can keep the ball, because they're struggling to keep it, Raf. Conor Malley as well as a bit of rumblings in the dressing room about him not playing yesterday. John Russell came out and talked about that. But even in his performance on Friday, there was a couple of times when Sligo won the ball back and they didn't counter attack quickly, and Malley was completely at fault for all of that, because he kept his foot on the ball and he wasn't trying to break through the lines, wasn't passing through the line, should I say. And it was easy then for Drogheda to come back into it. They need to attack in numbers, and it started in that second half against Drogheda. I think Drogheda had themselves to blame for that. But yesterday they just get huffed and puffed. 20 minutes into the second half, they were okay. They got a few chances. Again, I would have said, with lack of concentration from Rovers more so than the good of Sligo. But we'll see how they get on.
Yeah, it was David Fairclough, wasn't it? The Liverpool.
That's what it is.
Yeah, I know it. Chris, I think.
I see.
No, it's just because I've interviewed him before many years ago when he had his book out, a couple 2-hour interview. Very lovely fella. I think he does come over to Ireland a fair bit.
He hates being called a super sub as well, doesn't he?
I think that actually might have been the title of the book as well. I have it here in the house somewhere. But yeah, a lovely man as well. And then also Sligo, just the bit of news, because I've mentioned this fella a few times, but their set piece coach Jesse Axton is no longer at at the club. So that's me done with kind of obsessing over their set pieces, and every time they seem to have a free kick or corner.
Well, they
I don't know.
conceded more goals from set
Yeah.
pieces than they had scored them. It's not right.
Well, anyway, either way, we'll see how they develop over time. And then the final game from Friday, which was Bohemians beating Galway United 2-1 away from home. And I suppose, Conan, looking at this one, mixed emotions, I suppose, for Bohs over the span of the weekend, having lost at home to Waterford, and turned that completely around, then going to Galway United, one of the toughest places to go, and getting the win. So again, they're probably, I think, as you said before, they're kind of reflective of where the league is at, in that it's very hard to make any real judgment call about them.
No, you can't. It's so unpredictable, and it has been like this. This is why the league is so great. You'll have this, especially this time of year as well, when everybody beats everybody. It kind of changes towards after the breakdown, when things calm down a bit, and then you kind of see the teams take off towards the end of the season. But yeah, it's fantastic. Really, like, you'd love to see Bohs after having the performance that they had, that they win in front of their own fans in Dalymount on Friday, and they just weren't able to do that. In fairness, Waterford were excellent. Really poor defending for that second goal from Lonergan. I'd say Alan Reynolds, again, was not happy at all with his defending. But then to come back again on Monday against Galway, who took the lead through Moses Dyer, who's been in flying form himself, and to come back with 2 goals, again from Sean Greene. He loves a 93rd minute winner, doesn't he? But it's fantastic from a Bohs perspective. Shows the character and the resilience that the team has, the morale within the group as well, that never say die attitude, because they hammered the door down on Friday to try and get that equaliser against Waterford. It just didn't come. So they're fit. They're a fit side, and you'll need to be really smart and really clever and coming up in 85, 86 minute with only a goal up against Bohs, because they'll come at you, and they'll come at you hard.
Yeah, and I don't know if, again, it might be reading too much into this, Richie, but even at half time against Galway there, when the whistle blows, you see the Bohs players sort of running off, and then the Galway lads are sort of walking off. They have a 1-0 lead at that stage, and obviously Galway have been great so far, but I don't know how much one can read into the fact that they're running off maybe to get a bollocking off Alan Reynolds. And then even looking at Sean Green's first goal, it's one of those, maybe he doesn't have a right to win it, but he seems to even want it more. And I don't know if it's reading too much into psychology in terms of the walking off at half time.
That was something at Shamrock Rovers we weren't allowed to do. We were never allowed to walk off at half time. As soon as that whistle blew, everybody ran off the pitch. And vice versa, that when you're going onto the pitch, everybody runs onto the pitch, nobody walks on. So, yeah, I don't know. It's in football, look, you're always trying to get them small margins, aren't you? Like, and listen, realistically, is that one of them? Maybe not. Nobody really knows. But all I know is that Bohemians, we really, really questioned that character at the start of the season. We did. They were going out losing games that they shouldn't have, not really putting performances in, and looked like they were going under a little bit. They've completely went 360 on an absolute U-turn. They've been incredible over the last couple of weeks, and they've actually shown character in abundance. They have, and Alan Reynolds will be really, really pleased with that. And not just him, but I think even the fans now will see that, you know what, the lads are fighting, and they're fighting till the end, and the Bohemians fans will really get behind that. They will. But the only thing is, they're kind of all or nothing at the moment. They've 7 wins and 7 losses they have, so I'm sure they'd want to start picking up a couple of draws here and there. games that you'll go out into, and you'll be thinking, right, like, we haven't been at our best, but we won't get beaten. That's when teams can really put a title challenge forward. And listen, if they had won their game against Waterford on Friday night, they'd be top of the league at the moment. They would. So where they were probably 4 or 5 weeks ago to where they are now, it's chalk and cheese. It is. So everybody needs to give them a bit of an applause, because let's be realistic, when they were down there, we were the first ones to hammer them. So yeah, they've done an absolutely incredible job, and it just makes the league way more interesting, doesn't it? So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and then Conan, I suppose Taraska as well had a really good game yesterday, at least, in terms of his performances. Obviously, he didn't start the season. Talbot was in for the first few games, and then Reynolds changed it. And again, the rationale for that isn't particularly clear, but he was key to them getting the win away at Galway, because Galway had their fair share of chances.
Yeah, 10 shots on target, Raf, they had in the game. So obviously he saved 9 of them, which was fantastic from Taraska's point of view. They've been, and even with the back line that they have, like, it was Mountney, Flores, Grehen, I think Moran was as well. So it was the formation that they had. I think we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. I think Richie mentioned it. When you don't have that set defenders. You're kind of they're playing out of position, and then they're still able to perform to a level where they can go and compete and win games of football in the Premier Division. It's that's what I mean. It's that strength of character. It's that, like, yeah, I'll do a job there, no problem at all, and just get on with it. And obviously, like, Buckley's still probably not 100% fit. Cornwall the same. Lee Kavanagh's got an injury now as well, so that's why he's dropped out. So yeah, they're struggling for defenders. I'm still surprised that they let Keane Byrne go, who obviously couldn't play in the game yesterday. But it's probably an area that they'll need to strengthen for sure come the summer.
Yeah, and then Richie, I suppose from the Galway United point of view, so Moses Dyer still very, very productive in front of goal, but their run in recent time in the last few weeks, so that's 4 defeats in their last 7, haven't been unbeaten previous to that, and also there hasn't been a clean sheet in that 7-game run, and that's since the Moses Dyer inspired 2-0 win at Dalymount. So there's probably been a tiny drop off, but again, I imagine Caulfield wouldn't be he certainly wouldn't be panicking. They're still, they might be 6th on the table, but it's 4 points off the top, so it's not like it's a complete drop off.
Yeah, and it's not like John Caulfield's team to go that many games getting beaten. It's especially not keeping clean sheets as well. That's kind of what they're built on. They're built on keeping clean sheets and then getting balls into the box. You see their goal even against Bohemians. It's a ball into the box, and Dyer does brilliant to get the finish. He's been an absolute revelation in the league. He's been incredible. It's a great find from John Caulfield. So they won't want to be relying on him to get them out of jail all the time. They'll want to start keeping some clean sheets. We spoke about some of the other teams down there, Sligo, Waterford, that weren't keeping clean sheets. And you find it hard to win games when you're not keeping clean sheets. So listen, nobody needs to tell John Caulfield that. I'm sure that's what they're going to be working on over the next couple of weeks is keeping them clean sheets, because everybody knows if you play against Galway, you're going to get bombarded with crosses, bombarded with shots on target, and they always seem to score goals. They do. So if they do start keeping clean sheets, they'll be fine. Like that, they could be an outside chance of European spots, or you never know what they can go and do, because John Caulfield, he's been there before. He's done it with the likes of Cork, and you never know what they could do. As I said, if they start keeping them clean sheets, because they're an absolute handful going forward.
Yeah, and then the First Division Cove Ramblers closed the gap to second place Bray Wanderers to 1 point, thanks to Cian Bargary's late winner in their head-to-head. Treaty United chugging along nicely after winning Finn Harps, a cracking goal by Mark Byrne in that one as well. Kerry won a game of penalties at UCD where the students missed 2 from the spot. Tim Oliver Heimer saving both, and Longford Town got the better of Wexford thanks to a well-taken Emmanuel Oluwafemi winner. Now, not much to mention on the pitch, I suppose, between Athlone and Dundalk, bar Dundalk staying top, but not pulling away at this stage. So 0-0 draw between them. But off the pitch, though, a group called Tiger 11 were said to be on the verge of completing a takeover at Athlone, who have been owned by the US-owned Valio Group, but with Ian Ryan tipped to become the manager. But then on Thursday, the club denied that this was happening, and then this is just a passage from Midlands 103. Stories have emerged about a deal to sell the club being complete, about 3 separate managers lined up to take over the senior men's squad. There was even a phantom press conference called by someone outside the club on behalf of the club. A senior source from within the club says they're frustrated at the level of inaccurate reporting around the team at the moment. They confirm there is a likely change coming at board level after the departure of the Valio football group, but the ownership of the club won't change. They insist no deal has been done. Reports of a group called Tiger 11 headed by Zach Goldman being close to a deal are wide of the mark. However, investors involved with Plymouth Argyle are said to be the leading candidates. So in essence, I was expecting we'd be talking about something here, and we're not. So we're going to move on to the next thing, which is back to Kerry FC actually, and this is Colin Healy taking charge of the club. But Conor McCarthy, who had been manager before and obviously the youngest manager in league history as well, is staying on the coaching staff. So Colin Healy, in a statement yesterday after the announcement that he's become manager at Kerry, he said, "The last year has been the toughest of my life since losing my wife Kelly. During that time, my main focus has been to help my 2 young children cope with the loss of their mother and help them find some form of normality. On behalf of my family, I would sincerely like to thank every person who has supported me privately and publicly." And I suppose in terms of Colin Healy as well, the situation, of course, Conan, that happened when he was no longer part of the staff once the FAI parted ways with Ivan Gleeson as Republic of Ireland women's manager. But this, on a personal level, I suppose, is huge for him, kind of getting back into the game, as he kind of outlined there, with everything he's gone through. But at the same time, for Kerry, they're getting a really experienced manager, and Conor McCarthy staying on as well to sort of learn the role, I suppose, learn a little bit more. He's obviously been learning firsthand anyway, but it's a potential push forward for Kerry, and that's sort of what they were saying in their statement anyway.
Oh, it's huge for them. But just going back to Colin, Raf, it's like he's been through so much over the last year, and for him to be back involved, I'm sure he's delighted that it's local, that he can be. His travel isn't going to be a big issue to him, and obviously delighted to see Conor McCarthy stay involved with the club as well. He's done a terrific job there, being so young. A lot of pressure brought with that, being a young manager in the league, and he's handled it superbly. And now Colin is going to step in. I'm sure he'll attract some players. He knows the game inside out. He knows the players in Munster very well. And I think everybody in the country is just going to be fully behind him as well. And considering how tough it's been on him over the last 12, 15 months.
Yeah, and they have Treaty United on Friday at Mount Hawk Park as well. So I imagine a lot of fans will be there to see that first game under Colin Healy as well. And speaking of Athlone earlier as well, an Irish manager going into the championship in terms of taking over a club, having been interim versus Alan Sheehan, an Athlone native who is now the Swansea manager as well. So I'm sure we'll be keeping a close eye on how he's getting on there. And we're going to finish off on the Champions League here, because PSG v Arsenal, the second leg, is live on RT2 and RT Player 7:30 on Wednesday, along with a live blog and highlights, which will be on YouTube and the RTE website. And we will talk about the other game, which is tonight as well, between Inter and Barcelona. The first leg was amazing, I have to say. But just on PSG versus Arsenal, I suppose, Richie, Arsenal, as we know the lay of the land, they're trailing 1-0 from that first leg, and they were outplayed for parts of that game. But Thomas Partey coming back in, I imagine, will help Arsenal's midfield balance. But the only thing they need to find is that kind of lack of cutting edge, because even at the weekend, it was sort of missing against what is a very good Bournemouth side.
Yeah, listen, Partey was a big miss for them, he was. And not just him missing, because it kind of, Arteta had to alter the team and drop Declan Rice back a little bit deeper, and obviously he was at that getting the goals against Real Madrid in the previous round. So listen, for me, I think PSG are the team to beat. Every time I watch them, they're incredible. They are. They dominate the ball. It doesn't matter who they're playing against, where it is, they dominate the ball. They create loads of chances. So going over to PSG is going to be a really, really tall task, especially being 1-0 down from the previous leg. But the only comfort or positive Arsenal could probably take from it is they went to the Bernabeu a couple of weeks ago and put in an unbelievable performance. If they can do something similar like that, listen, they know PSG are going to dominate the ball, but Madrid kind of done that over there as well, and they'll be looking for Saka and Martinelli to break with the pace that they showed over there. You see Martinelli's goal in the last couple of minutes against Madrid, and they'll be hoping for something similar, because let's be realistic, they're not going to go over there and dominate the ball. PSG are going to dominate. They're going to have the lion's share. They're going to probably create the most chances, but Arsenal just need to hang in there. Hopefully they can catch them on the break, because listen, at 1-0, as everybody knows, anything can happen really.
Yeah, I suppose, Conan, as well, we've seen plenty of evidence, and even this season, but obviously in prior eras of PSG as well, there are pressure points there, and sometimes they can just fall apart. They have a history of it, and I don't know, you have a different set of players. It's a different set of players to an extent that are playing this time, so you don't know if the weight of history will kind of catch up with them. But that is something Arsenal can try and exploit, I suppose, because we saw what Aston Villa did, and PSG were quite fortunate to escape that pressure cooker.
Yeah, and the manager as well, different manager, because Luis Enrique is just so calm and composed, both on the touchline in his press conferences and in the dressing room when we get sneak peeks of what he says to his players. I think I think PSG are just so comfortable in being ahead 1-0. They were so comfortable in the Emirates. They probably should have scored a second goal, maybe even a third. I know Arsenal had that offside goal as well. That was very tight in the end. Offside's offside. They played PSG, were able to rest players the weekend. They played Strasbourg. They were beaten 2-1. I think they rested 8 or 9 players from their usual starting 11. So the likes of Marquinhos didn't play. Dembele didn't play. Vitinha didn't play. So these players are fresh, ready, and looking to get into a Champions League final. And I just feel as if they have the capabilities of doing that. I can't see Arsenal, like Richie, I can't see them dominating the ball. I think they'll have to play on a counter-attack, and with the speed and energy of PSG's fullbacks.
Yeah,
I think they're going to be quicker and faster than Arsenal's, and I think Saka's that would be the big play. I know you're talking about Partey, but I don't think he'll just get the ball all too often. I think PSG will just dominate the ball in the middle of the park, but it's when they do get it back, how quickly they can get through from defence to attack. I think that's going to be key. But I think PSG will still win and still get through to the final.
Yeah, so we'll see that. Again, reminder, that's on RT2 and the RT Player Wednesday from 7:30. And the other game, we had the first leg on RT last Wednesday, which was Inter Milan or Barcelona against Inter Milan. And Richie, that was an amazing first leg. You know, if tonight's one is half as good, obviously we'll be treated to something brilliant. Then it's in the San Siro, obviously an iconic venue as well. But what's your gut instinct saying, having watched those two sides tussle against each other last week, and especially with what is on the line, trying to get to a Champions League final, a vibrant Barcelona against an Inter who've sort of been there and done that almost, except in the Champions League. They know what it's like to get to a final. Can they do it again, and can they spoil Barcelona's party?
that's crazy. It was an incredible game. It was, and you could see Barcelona, they're never going to change the way they play. They went out for that high press straight away, from kickoff, went out for the high press. And Inter Milan just kept playing the ball up straight over the top. And they were constantly in. The only thing that surprised me was, if somebody had told me before the game that Inter Milan were going to score 3 goals, I would have said that 100% going to win the game, because you don't really associate Inter Milan with conceding so many goals. And obviously, on the flip side of that, you have the quality of Barcelona, you do. So I genuinely can't call that game for the second leg. If we get half as entertaining game, it'll be absolutely incredible. It will. But for me, I fancy Barcelona still. It's always hard to turn them down. I think Dumfries was incredible in the first leg. He was. I know he went off late on. He was probably knackered. So yeah, look, it's going to be all to play for tonight, and it's going to be such a good game.
Yeah, and then Lewandowski, I think, is back for Barcelona, or at least he's back in contention, Conan. But the one that all the eyes are on is Lamine Yamal, who, it's very hard to explain what he's doing at the age he is, 17. And I mean, we'd seen a bit of him when I think he played against the Ireland under-17s a couple of years ago. And we were already hearing, the people raving about him, but you don't think he's going to be dominating a Champions League semi-final, fixture. Obviously, like there were other great players on the pitch, as mentioned, the likes of Dumfries and Thuram and others who also performed well on the opposite side. But it's hard to explain what Lamine Yamal is doing, and especially with, I think he seemed to have done his groin or something before kickoff, and then he comes on and he does that, Conan.
The thing that I love about Lamine Yamal is his consistency, because he's just, every single game he plays is at least an 8 out of 10, sometimes a 9, and quite often a 10. And it's just their attacking play is frightening. They scored 3 against Real Madrid. They scored 4 the previous week against Celta Vigo. Scored 4 the previous week against Atletico Madrid. Now, in those games, they conceded 7 in those 3 games, but still won all 3 games. So it's as if they're just going out and saying, look, we'll score goals. We're happy enough to concede. But with Inter, like Richie said, Inter don't concede too many goals. But recently, in the last month, they have. They conceded 3 in this Coppa Italia final to AC Milan when they were the home team. They conceded 2 against Monza, who were relegated already in Serie A. Conceded 2 against Parma as well, recently as well. So this is something that is kind of, we're not used to seeing Inter concede goals. So I can see it being another classic where we're just going to say, right, you attack, we attack, a little bit of basketball, see who comes out on top. And like Richie, I think Barcelona will be the team to do that.
Yeah, and I suppose it's something Richie alluded to already, Conan, but the Barcelona high line, we've seen it throughout the season under Hansi Flick. It is a bit of Russian roulette in a certain sense, though, isn't it?
It is. And do you know what? There's Gerard Martin, the left back. I do not know how he plays for Barcelona. He's come up through the ranks. They signed him from a team in the 4th tier, I think 3rd or 4th tier, and he's gotten his chance. But anytime I've seen him play, he's been the weak link. And if I was playing against Barcelona, that's exactly who I'd be focusing in on, because he's the player that gives up silly fouls, gets caught in possession way too easily, and he's the player that gets get caught in that high line. And if you notice Barcelona, when they concede, the majority of their goals come in from down that left-hand side. And if he plays tonight, it's a focus of extreme attention that Inter should be focusing on, definitely.
Yeah, I suppose it's the fact that they're missing Alejandro Balde, who would usually be the starter for Spain, even as well, but obviously with a muscular injury. But I on Monday or Easter on it's not Easter Monday, geez, that's like a month ago. On Bank Holiday Monday, so yesterday I spoke to Shelbourne's Rachel Graham about the Women's Premier Division, but also first about Louise Quinn and the end of an era for Irish football. All right, delighted to be joined by Shelbourne's Rachel Graham. Rachel, how are you? How are you keeping?
I'm really good. How are you, Raf?
Yeah, not too bad at all. Obviously, congrats on Saturday as well with another win for yourself and Shelbourne. But before we chat about that, it's a bit of an end of an era for the Republic of Ireland team as well, because Louise Quinn is retiring after 121 Ireland caps, and that's since her senior debut in 2008. So that's ending both her club and international career. And she put out a statement last week when she said, "When the time arrives that you need to write your retirement statement, they are the hardest words to find, but it is time for me to hang up the boots. There are so many reasons as to why or why not, but it's just one of those things when you know, and that's just part of the statement." She goes on to, I suppose, thank the support of her family and friends and teammates and that over what has been a very, very long career. But you've known her for a long time, Rachel. I mean, I think I was looking back at the headshots from the under-19s in 2006, and you're part of that, and so was Louise as well, and quite a well-known crop of players who all went on to have long careers with the senior Ireland team.
Yeah, God, that's a long time ago now, Raf. And don't put the picture up. Don't do me dirty now. I don't want to see it. But I know Louise, obviously, now our years would have played underage representative squad with her, and then obviously a couple of times in Ireland. But like I thought it was written in the stars for her yesterday. She came on for Birmingham, and I thought she was going to score the winner to get them promoted. But look, obviously wasn't to be. But I think, like you said, what a servant she's been to Ireland in that green jersey. She made her debut in 2008. So like 17 years playing for her country and 121 caps, but she's been so consistent over them caps. I'd say she's one of our most consistent players that we've probably ever had. And for the likes of Louise, she's not someone who, say, you look at Kate McCabe and she's genetically blessed. She's quick, she's powerful. You can see she's built to play sport. And Louise probably wouldn't have been as lucky, and someone who worked really hard to get where she did in football and get everything out of football. And I mean all that as a compliment, where it hasn't come overly easy to her, and everything she gets, it's hard work. And I used to remember we once or twice in camp we'd go to pictures in the evening, and we'd obviously all have popcorn and pick a mix when Louise is there with her yogurt and her fruit and her nuts, and that's decided something that people don't see. And it's all these little decisions that you have to make throughout the day to make yourself the best you can be, and that's what she had to do. She couldn't cut corners. She was someone that every decision she had to make throughout the day was the right one that she had to make. So, to do as well as she did, it's a real credit to her, because it's something that she had to work really hard for. And I think she made a nice comment in her retirement statement that, one of the reasons she played football was to play for Ireland. And you could see that in her performance that she had for Ireland. It was body on the line, or it was head on the line, and whatever you needed from Louise, she'd be more than willing to do. And I think even, as a leader, obviously, look, we're going to miss her as a player, but I do believe it's the right time for her to retire. I think everything we're going to get out of Louise as a player, we've got it out of her. You could see she was kind of picking up a few injuries, and it was becoming harder for her. So I do think it's the right time. But I mean, what a leader that team is losing, off the pitch as well. She would have been one of the ones that fought for the better conditions all them years ago. So she's come on such a journey with the Ireland team. And I mean, on the pitch, I mean, what a leader she's been, what a player. And I think if you ask anyone who plays with her how much guidance she gives you in the game and how much direction, not only for herself, she's always in the right position, good positions, but she's coaching everyone around her, and that's obviously a huge loss as well. So look, again, I think it's the right time for her to retire, but again, another big person that we're losing. And she's someone that you'd obviously like to see stay involved. Maybe that's in a few years' time. She's obviously started a family now, so maybe a couple of years down the road we might see her back involved in some capacity.
Yeah, you talk about the leadership because I think at Peamount when she started now, I think it's at 16 that Eileen Gleeson makes her captain. So, that's a, you were talking about Jess Stapleton there a few weeks ago and how like she's almost like a natural leader as well, even when she first goes into the Shelbourne dressing room very, very quickly within a year. But you would have played against her when she was at Peamount. Like what was she like to come up against? I know you're probably not in direct contact given the positions you were playing, but I imagine it's one of those that players you'd sort of be targeting from an opposition point of view.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, look, physically, she's a big presence with her height and her size. So straight away, she stands out and she's a threat for any set pieces, or even when we're attacking set pieces, it's try and keep it away from her, obviously. So, but look, as it, you can hear her non-stop throughout the game, her talk and her communication with everybody. And I think it's the way she plays as well. It's more of a leadership style that how many times has she put her head on a ball or put her face in the ball where she knows she's going to be kicked and she's no issue doing it. And that's for me what you want from one of your leaders, where they're not just talking, they're putting their body in the line, they're walking the walk basically. So look, she was obviously someone at a young age that stands out, and some people just have these leadership qualities, they're born with them. But she's definitely someone who, was, although she wasn't captain, but she would have been a big leader for that Ireland team, definitely.
Yeah, and even the thing at club level of obviously starting out in the league, but then going to say Sweden and with Eskilstuna United as well between 2013 and 2016, a move that probably helped and in sort of a way of being the making of her in terms of then what follows in terms of going to Arsenal and building a career there as well.
Yeah, so that was obviously her first step to become a professional. And like we said, it's not necessarily the better standard, but you're going and you're living each day as a professional footballer. And like I was saying about Louise, it's not someone that it comes really easy to. It's a 24/7 thing. So for her to be at her best, she would have to be in a professional environment. So look, she's had a brilliant career. She got, I think it was 4 years at Arsenal, who, are a top team. If you have to be really at it to be playing there for 4 years, definitely. And then she moved to Italy for a year or two. So look, she's done a really good career, really good player. But like I said, probably got the best out of what she was given naturally. But I mean, what a presence to have on a pitch. And you say all these things, big presence, but she was also a good player as well. Read the game really well, understood her position, and on the ball she was good. So yeah, overall, a big loss for Ireland, and she's had a great career. So testament to her.
Yeah, and like even going back to the headshots, so these are from the Info photo agency in 2006. I don't know if you even remember doing these at all, but like looking at the other names, like there's yourself, there's Louise, who all go on to become internationals. Stephanie Zambra as well, who of course finished up of course as well. Diane Caldwell, another one who went to the World Cup. Anya Gorman, of course, another one who did as well. When you're there together as under 19s at that time, does that dream of what that core has gone on to achieve, was that even on your minds at that time, that there was a sense that Irish football, by the time that your eras were becoming nearer the end or coming to an end in Louise's case, that you would achieve the unimaginable as has happened?
Not really, no. I think when you're that young, you don't really ever think of your future. But I think we had a great, like you said, all them players there, we had a great kind of year or two. So it would have been under 19s, would have been two age groups, but we had a really good group at that age. Like you've mentioned, Diane, Anya, I think Noelle Murray would have been playing, Louise Quinn, like Shauna Cook, they've all gone on to play senior international football. So we had a really good group, but probably didn't appreciate at the time. I think Karen Duggan was in as well. She would have played up a year maybe, but yeah, we probably wouldn't appreciate at the time because we didn't know. That was just what we thought was the norm. But even if they haven't gone on international, senior international, still playing at really good level, League of Ireland. So look, we had a really good team. And obviously, back then the structures weren't as good as they would have been now. So we were probably just playing in our local Dublin league at the time, playing against each other, and we weren't probably getting great games. It's probably 3 or 4 really good games a year you were getting. So I think the structures now allow for, a League of Ireland where these types of players are playing quality opposition week in, week out, and you can see that now and how well our underage international teams are doing. But like I said, I think we've always had the players. It's just been the structures maybe not have been as good in the past, whereas that's something that's getting better now. So hopefully, the likes of the underage, under 19s now, that they all go on to senior international and they're just, better equipped when they get up to the top level and in a more professional environment than we ever would have been.
Yeah, in the sense of an era, end of an era as well, with Louise's longtime centre back partner as well, Lee Fahy, who's already retired from international football towards the end of last year, but now obviously finished up at club level, or finishing up at club level once the Women's Super League ends, and obviously has again, I suppose another player who's gone and achieved a huge amount as well, captaining Liverpool as well, which is obviously a great thing for herself.
Yeah, like again, another big loss of a big leader for us in there in that dressing room, and the same as Louise. I think it's the right time for her to retire. I think you've gotten everything out of the game that you're going to get as a player. But again, someone who would have been there from almost the start of the journey of be getting better conditions for players and bringing it, up to the same level and same respect as what we would have with the men's game. So look, I think these players, deserve a lot of recognition for what they've done. They should be, celebrated. They've had great careers, done great, performances for Ireland, been so consistent for Ireland. So again, it's sad to see them go, but I do think it's the right time. And I just hope that they're, really remembered. And if they can keep them in the game, brilliant. But if not, celebrate everything that they've done. And they've left the jerseys definitely in better places for the ones coming through.
Sure. And now turning our attentions to the Women's Premier Division. So Saturday, Sligo Rovers beat Peamount United 1-0. We'll chat about that one. That's quite a notable result for Sligo. Your own Shell's team went to Treaty United and won 3-1. Shamrock Rovers also away winners 4-1 at DLR Waves. Bohemians another away win 2-0 at Cork City. And then Wexford bucked that trend, winning at home 2-0 against the newcomers Waterford. And then Athlone Town really kind of setting themselves down really and underlying the fact that they are really here to stay in terms of having a chance at defending their title. 3-0 winners at what is usually very impressive Galway United team. But we're going to start on your own Shells team at Treaty United. And again, there's been a pattern when we've been chatting away where, it's hard fought often in the first half, and then your strength in depth and the strength of your team sort of shines through. And this game is kind of similar in that sense, but you needed the sort of bottle opener of the set piece as well, with Pearl very much at the center of it, to get things going.
Yeah, and look, we obviously spoke during the week about Treaty. We knew they had good attacking players that could potentially hurt us, so we had to be aware of their attacking threat. But they probably weren't as attacking in the first half as we had anticipated. They were kind of happy for us to have the ball in our own half, and then when we did get into the final third, they made it difficult for us. But we were probably a bit disappointed with how we played in the final third in the first half, just considering how clinical we have been over the last few games. We had chances and we were, not, in the previous weeks we would have done a lot better for them. And it was kind of one of them games we were thinking, is it one of these days where we're going to, pepper the goal but not score? So then eventually 40 minutes, we get a corner and Pearl wins the first header, and then Rebecca Cook is forced to a loose ball and we could win 1-0 up at half time. And I would say it's deserved. I think we had, majority possession, the better chances. And then second half, then they came out much different, much more attacking, and probably caught us off guard a bit. And I think it was like early into the second half, they got the equaliser. So for us, then it's about how we react. But like you were saying then about the, as the games go on, I think it just shows the depth that we have in our squad at the moment. And on 60 minutes, Noelle Murray came on, who's, one of the best players in the league. And she really opened them up, started creating chances for us, caused a lot of trouble. And then we get, I think it was 74th minute, then we go 2-1 up, which Noelle is heavily involved in the goal. And then soon after, 3 minutes later, we're 3-1 up. And then again, bringing on fresh legs to just make sure we see the game out. So I think it's the quality of our squad at the moment, the depth, the players that we're bringing on. It's in no way weakens their 11 or anything like that. We're probably getting stronger as we make our subs. So I think that's the big difference from probably us and Treaty at the moment, because, first half was really even, really well fought. We probably edged it a little bit, but then, as the game goes on, the quality that we're bringing off the bench is what's making the difference in games.
Yeah, and Mackenzie Anthony with those the second and the third goals as well, and up just being sort of in the right place at the right time when you watch the goals back. And for overseas players like herself, like she's obviously been in great form, seems to be settling in really well. What do you do as a squad to sort of make her feel welcome? Obviously, she'd spoken to Maggie Pierce, who was with you last year before coming over, so she maybe had a sense of what to expect. And then I think she said when she joined that she had a connection to Owen Weirin as well, so kind of had maybe there's elements there. But as a squad, you're a very settled core in terms of the squad itself. Like, what do you do to sort of make them feel even off the pitch more so than on the pitch?
Yeah, well, we always just make sure everyone, first of all, feels welcome when they come up to their first session or the first time meeting us. Everyone, if you're in our dressing room, it's, everyone gets the same level of respect, whether you're 16, 26, 36, coming in from abroad. Everyone, if you're in our dressing room, you have the same respect. And I think we just, like to make everyone feel welcome. We'll go out of our way, meet them outside training, make sure they're, included in any, outside football activities that we do. We might go to the men's match together. We're all going to go later today. And usually sometimes if we have a week off, it usually maybe involves a bit of drink or a night out. And that's kind of when everyone, lets their guard down a bit and you kind of get to know everyone a lot more. So look, we just, you have to understand how hard it is sometimes for these players coming over. They're a long way from home. They're leaving their family. So something that we're always really conscious of, and we always just make sure that we want them to feel so welcome. They're all included straight away. And like I said, I think the biggest thing is the respecting that, everyone's at the same level. Just because you're new in doesn't mean you don't have your say or you can't, pipe up in the dressing room. It's everyone's treated the same. Everyone has the same respect. So I think that always helps for them coming in. We've been there before. We've had these players, even when players come up in the academy, it's the same thing. You just have to make them feel welcome. Just be aware of what they're feeling, what they're going through. And I think it's worked really well so far. And I find it always helps them on the pitch then. If they're getting comfortable off the pitch, they'll play better on the pitch. So it's a win-win for both of us.
Yeah, and then from the opposition point of view for Treaty United, I know you'd mentioned, I think, Madison McGuane a few weeks ago in terms of like one of the young players to really watch. She's wearing the number 10 jersey for Treaty against you. I imagine in close proximity to yourself in terms of how the game flows. Like, what did you make of her performance overall and the potential that is there, especially from close quarters?
Yeah, look, we obviously picked her out a couple of weeks ago when she played against Rovers, and she was definitely good against us. For someone who's only 15, it's scary to think how good she can be. And even for their goal that they do score, she picks up the ball at the halfway line and runs nearly the length up to her 18-yard box. So it does really well for their goal. But yeah, look, a huge talent. She's someone that I'm sure is going to go all the way. Probably won't keep her in the country past 18, 19. But look, she was, for someone who's 15, I just couldn't get over how young she was and how much willing she's to get on the ball. And, there's no fear there. She doesn't want to go hiding, but definitely one for the future. Really tricky, good player. And look, playing centre mid at 15 is really tough ask, but she was definitely one of their standout players on the day.
Yeah, and then turning our attentions to Athlone Town's win over Galway United. So that was 3-0. It was live on TG Cahir as well. And pre-match, they asked Phil Trill, the Galway United manager, about the lack of clean sheets. And then very early on, they do concede. So that seems to be an issue. And I suppose particularly the first two goals, the third goal we'll talk about as well, because that was a completely different matter. But the first two goals, certainly it did show some defensive vulnerabilities.
Yeah, and look, I think everyone was probably expecting a much tighter game than it was. I definitely was anyway. But I think, like you said, the goals they conceded, they'd be really disappointed with. And to be fair to Galway, they are missing big players at the moment. Nia Farley's missing. Keola Bergen had to go off injured. Lindsay McKee, Aisling Meany's out injured. So they're missing big players for them. So it is tough when you are missing that amount of players. The players that step up often, they're quite young, and it's hard to have a squad of 18, 19, 20 that can all be ready to start in an 11. And so they're not at their best. So it's hard to kind of be too critical of them. But I think the goals, you can see that they'd be disappointed with the first one in, it's a ball in, and to have that much time in your pretty much your 6-yard box is really disappointing. And then the second one's a corner in, and I don't know if it goes straight in or she gets the header on it before it goes in. But even, Jane Mirren, she's not the biggest of goalkeepers. You probably need to protect her a bit more. And there's two Athlone players in front of her and no Galway player. And it's just, if there's a Galway player there, she might head it away, but probably a lack of maybe that leadership on the pitch for someone to spot that. So I think they'd be really disappointed with that. And then I think, you just can't give Athlone a sniff to be 2-0 down against them. You're at a big ask for you to get back into the game. And then obviously the third goal we've seen, it's like, it's obviously not a goal. It's a strike from distance. And Jane, she actually makes a great save for someone so small to get up and push it onto the crossbar, and then really disappointed. I don't know why. The reason was it sun in the eyes. I don't know if the line gave or the ref. I couldn't really tell. But even the Athlone players weren't even calling for it, so they probably should have known it maybe wasn't in. But look, really disappointed for them. 2-0 down's a big ask coming back against Athlone, but I think 3-0 then it'll take something too special to come back from that.
Yeah, no, I think as Maeve Burke was on co-commentary said about that third goal in relation to the ball, near Hui She Trosnon Lena. I think that doesn't need much translation. It probably something, there's a German translation there from the 1966 World Cup final as well in regard to one of the England goals as well that could be thrown in. But it's a real statement win for Athlone. I suppose they looked really powerful. It was not just the goals as well. They just looked really solid in defence, and then just through the thirds as well. They just looked a cut above.
Yeah, look, I know, and even Phil Trill, in fairness, after the match, obviously disappointed with the Tour goal, but I think he accepted, they just weren't at it at all, and they didn't blame the goal or didn't try and point fingers. They fully accepted that they just weren't good enough. And look, Athlone are flying at the moment. They're good all around. Their keeper was good, and she's not even the first choice keeper. And then, their back line is solid, and then attacking wise, they're so good. Maddie Gibson caused a lot of trouble down that left hand side. So, they're a really good team at the moment, and then for Galway to be a bit weakened by the players that they're missing, it was, a big ask for them. They're flying at the moment. Kelly Brady is popping up. She's causing a lot of trouble. She's nominated for Player of the Month, so really tough at the moment. They're definitely going to be title challengers. I think they're better than they were probably last year. So really good attacking wise and really good defensive wise at the minute. So, but even you can see, they're physically all developed. They're mature, and if you looked at Galway at the weekend, there's a few kind of young players who probably haven't reached their physical max yet. So it was a tough ask, but yeah, definitely gonna take a lot to beat them.
Yeah, and then you have Galway this Saturday coming as well. Like, how are you looking at it now, especially having, you're in great form as well, but Galway will obviously be looking to battle back, so there's a bit of an incentive from their point of view as well. But then again, you can maybe spot things that you feel maybe you can get on top of them in a certain sense as well.
Yeah, and look, it's always hard to play a team who's just off the back of a tough defeat, because they always kind of up their levels a bit. So look, we've always had a tough game against them, whether it's in Tolka or down in Galway. It's always been really tough. So expect no different this weekend. It's kind of coming to a big week, couple of weekends within the league. Athlone obviously on top, we're 1 point behind. So we don't want to fall too far off Athlone. Once you do one round of fixtures, it's not that many to be crawling back up, making up points. So it's crucial probably for us and for Galway that I'd say neither lose the game at the moment. And then I think for us, we're in good form. We have a good few wins on the trot, so we're going to hopefully keep that up. But Galway, like I said, a wounded animal. They're going to come back, probably better than they were this week. I don't know about their injuries, whether they're going to be back or not. Something I probably wouldn't read too much into. I just, we obviously know their threats and how we can hurt them. That's what you focus on. So look, it'll be a good game. I think 3-0 is probably, unexpected, and I don't think if we do win, I don't think it'd be as big of a scoreline as Athlone would have had.
Yeah, and then fairly straightforward wins then for Shamrock Rovers and Wexford, as mentioned earlier, against DLR and Waterford, respectively. The Bows Cork game, what was fairly noticeable was just how Bows really made the most of those corners that they put in, and it was an area maybe Cork City struggled with, at least in this game.
Yeah, and I think the commentator actually said that for one of the corners, it's an area that they're struggling lately, and like that's you seen it was 2 goals from it, and the Cork are probably struggling at the moment. It's for somewhere that's such a big footballing city. It's hard to see them not do so well, and you would kind of anticipate them to have been doing better probably than they have been doing. So look, against Bows, it's probably a game they might look to maybe try and pick up points, and obviously hasn't gone that way. So yeah, I think set pieces are big even for Bows. They're probably not going to score loads and loads from open play. So working on set pieces and corners is a big one for them. So look, you have to take your chances where you come. If it's from corners or set pieces, work on them hard, and then up the other end, make yourself hard to beat. And then if you can get 1 or 2 goals, if you're not getting them from open play, you work on your set pieces, and that's obviously what they've done their homework on Cork, that they're struggling with them at the moment. And then they've threatened players from corners, Lisa Murphy and Roisin are big girls, so they're the ones that popped up with the goals. And yeah, you take the goals where you can get them.
Yeah, and then obviously did mention that it was a notable result for Sligo Rovers against Peamount, 1-0 win, and like the goal itself, I imagine Peamount won't be too happy with the way it goes in, but from a Sligo point of view, where they're at in terms of the form they've been in, this one is huge from their point of view as well.
Yeah, obviously a big boost for Sligo. They've had a tough start to the season, tough few games. They're second from bottom, really tough results for them, conceding a lot of goals. So this is a big one for them. I think Peamount, I don't know, maybe were they expecting to a bit of an easier game. I don't know if you're going to off results, but I just find there's always a couple of mad results in the league, sometimes really unexpected ones, and you just have to make sure you're not on the wrong end of these results. And look, it's probably poor from Peamount's point of view. I know Amanda's probably a bit unlucky. She initially makes a save and then it kind of rebounds off her knee and just falls to the Sligo player. But I think before that, they're probably getting by the defence too easy. So yeah, really disappointing one. And then look, they had loads of time to get it back. I know they did score, but it was given offside. So it's just one of them days where it's just things just don't go your way. But for Peamount, that's a really disappointing. I'm sure they were hoping to be title challengers, but they're starting to fall a bit behind now at the moment.
Yeah, they're on 7 points, which leaves them 12 off Athlone and 11 off yourselves, although they do have a game in hand, but it is kind of a wide gap already. Even for Galway, who do have a game in hand, they are currently 6 off the top, obviously. If they were to win their game in hand, that would be cut down to 3, so they're not out of it by any means. But just over in England with the Women's Super League, so a good day for Abby Larkin, scoring a 98th minute equaliser as well, at home to Leicester, to make it 2-2 in that game. So, we were talking about her, I think, only a few weeks ago in terms of her development there. Moments like this will obviously only help.
Yeah, and look, again, another tough season, obviously, for her and our team. They're going to go down into the championship, but great to see Abby scoring. Always great to see someone Irish score. Great for her, great for her confidence. And look, it's, as you say, like, it's an easy finish, but goals like that, it's just about being in the right place, anticipating the ball in, and that's what she done brilliantly. And she's at Crystal Palace. She's a 2.5 year deal, so I assume she's going to be there next year. So I think it's obviously not nice to ever be relegated or go down, but like we spoke about it before, I think it could be good for her where she's playing in a team that is more attacking, has more of the ball, more chance to score goals, because Abby's a really attacking player. When she was here, she was probably scoring every week, getting loads of chance to attack, run at players, and she's probably not getting that at the moment. So I think dropping down a league could be something that really benefits her. And look, she's only 20. She's loads to learn, loads to even grow physically. She's going to get better and better. So I think while she can work on her attacking play, all the better. And that might be at championship level for the next couple of years where she does get these opportunities. So look, it's obviously not nice to be relegated, but it could be nearly a blessing in disguise for Abby.
Yeah, and then the Merseyside derby as well, Everton winning a 2-0 away against Liverpool. So I suppose there's two sides to this. Niamh Fahey not really getting the, I suppose the ending in terms of the Merseyside thing, in terms of that rivalry anyway, in terms of what she would have wanted. But on the same side, if we look at who the goalkeeper is for Everton, it's not the worst thing from an Irish point of view either.
No, and look, obviously she kept a clean sheet and she was made work for that clean sheet. She made some really good saves within the game, and for our own international team coming into camp soon, to have Courtney in good form is huge for us, because it's going to be two big games coming up now, and obviously haven't had the best of Nations League performances this year. So to have Courtney in good form is something that we're definitely going to need. I'd imagine Slovenia are going to get some chances in the game where we might need Courtney to save us, and likewise Turkey as well. We're going to be under a bit of pressure within these games, so having Courtney in good form is definitely something that's a big positive for the Ireland team.
Yeah, and I suppose final one, Jessica Hennessy as well, now released by Nottingham Forest, who play in the Championship in England. And this could pave the way for her return, assuming she wants to come back, could come back home and play more locally. But again, a player with a huge amount of talent. Like, she would have been in the Shelbourne youth teams before going to Athlone, wasn't she?
Yeah, she never played League of Ireland for Shelbourne, but she played like under 16 for Shelbourne. So like, she was, a really big player for Athlone, really big player for Rovers, and then obviously went away. And look, hasn't probably worked out as well as it would have. Not as far as won their league, so they're up into the championship now. But I've seen they got rid of, well, released 12 players, which I'd imagine is, pretty rootless over there. It's just, even the statement that they released, it was just a list of names, and these have been released. It wasn't even any sort of, writing about them or articles or paragraphs about them. It was just these 12 players are gone. So it's rootless over there. It's interesting to see now whether does she want to come back, and even with the likes of Rushi now playing in the league, I think sometimes it would have kind of been seen as you've failed if you've gone over and have to come back, but I think that's kind of starting to go away now. We've LOI who went and came back, and she's fine at the moment. It's our league is not way off these leagues over there. It's just the professional side of it where if she comes back here, she might not be able to live as a professional footballer, but the standard of training and playing will still be as good. And if she comes back to Rovers, like I said, Roosh is there, who's a senior international, so it might not be as daunting to come back. But look, obviously sad to see her being released, but look, it's not the end of the world. She's only young as well. It doesn't mean it's the end of it, or she can never go again. But if she does come home, I'd imagine it would be Rovers or Athlone who might sign her up.
Certainly. So it's watch this space. So I think that brings us to a close. So yeah, best of luck against Galway United at the weekend, and thanks for coming on, Rachel.
Thanks, Raf. No problem.
All right, so that is Shelbourne's Rachel Graham, discussing the Women's Premier Division there, and also some of the matters across the water involving the Irish in the Women's Super League and English Championship as well. And of course, earlier on, Louise Quinn and Niamh Fahey and the end of an era for the Republic of Ireland women's national team. But that is it for this week's podcast. Richie and Conan, thanks very much for your time, and we'll chat soon.
Thanks, Raf.
Very much.